Welcome to another episode of the Jobology podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, and today my guest is a friend of mine that I've known since high school. Her name is Megan, and she is the director of the President's Club for the San Diego Zoo. She's going to talk to us about zoo membership, conservation, and exactly how many animals are at the San Diego Zoo. So without further ado, Megan. Thank you for being with me today, Megan.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So the way we kind of always start off the podcast is we want to create kind of a baseline so we all know what we're talking about. So when you are meeting somebody for the first time versus like what it says on your business card when somebody asks your job, what's the distinction? So if I meet you out and I'm like, hey, Megan, what are you doing for work nowadays? What would you tell me versus like what's the title on your business card?
Yeah, definitely. This is a good question because the title on my business card is such a funny, specific thing. I say that I'm in philanthropy and membership for the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance.
Okay.
That's my 5 second, like, that is what I do.
Yeah. And then on the business card is what's your specific title?
My title is Director of President's Clubs, and President's Clubs are our upper level membership program at the zoo.
Okay, so when dealing with zoo membership, I mean, this happens a lot where I'm like, oh, I don't know what exactly the terms are, but like yearly memberships when people want to buy it, so they're not just buying single day tickets. Gotcha.
Yep. So we have, just like any other cultural institution, you can buy a membership, you get admission, among other things. President's clubs are the upper level portion of that. So it gets into like philanthropic membership. So your benefits kind of stop going up, and you start contributing philanthropically.
Okay, nice. Um, why do you become this? How do you become? So we can start with why. I mean, we like to do the why and the how because it kind of gives everybody a full picture. But why get into philanthropic adventures? I guess I don't know.
Yeah. So why get involved in philanthropic ventures? I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Uh,
That I as I was saying it, I was like, that sounds kind of like why do charity? Like,
Yeah,
well,
why do
it's
charity
kind of
work?
in yeah, it's kind of in the thing. Okay.
I mean, so you can approach this you can answer this in a couple different ways. If I'm a person on the street and, why am I opening my wallet? Why am I writing a check to an organization? It's because the world needs philanthropy. The world needs charity. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have to solve big problems like homelessness or conservation. But we don't live in a perfect world. So
No, we don't.
no, we do not. So there's a lot of organizations that do that great work. And so a lot of times their funding comes from, if not entirely from philanthropy and from, generous individuals. For the zoo, why do an upper level membership? I can go to the zoo. I can get my $100 annual pass. I can call it a day, and that gets me admission and done. Why get a membership that costs thousands of dollars? And the answer I think is a little bit different for everybody, but it gives people a really great way to. It gives people an easy way to contribute. They understand it. They understand what a membership entails. They get some great benefits, like being able to go to the zoo, bringing their friends and family, and it gives them that warm and fuzzy feeling that we all get when we contribute to making the world a better place. So the answer will be a little bit different for everybody, but that's kind of, I think, kind of the big distinction between buying something and contributing to something.
Gotcha. And I mean, it's also like if I am buying or if I'm donating to the Red Cross, I mean, I'm not putting in any charities down, nothing. But if I'm donating to the Red Cross, I don't know exactly where my money is going. I know it's going to the Red Cross and they're going to do some good stuff with it, but like I don't know specifically where it's going. Whereas if I'm buying this membership to the zoo, I know like, oh, hey, my money's going to these specific things that deal with the zoo, either conservation or philanthropy.
Yeah, exactly. People they like to know the impact. Part of the reason why we see people come back and renew these memberships year after year is that, they feel like they're contributing towards something bigger than themselves, which they are. And some people have different motivations, and they love the zoo, or they love the safari park, or they just love animals, or they love conservation. And everybody does it a little bit for a little bit of a different reason, but all again, just those warm and fuzzies. That's why
Yeah,
we all do
of
it.
course. Makes you feel good. Um, how do you get involved in this job? Is it something where somebody says, "Hey, Megan, I think you'd be great at this job. Check it out." Is it something where you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna research this on my own," or did you go to school for it? Like, what's kind of the path of how you actually get the job?
Yeah. So I joke that philanthropy, fundraising, advancement, development, it goes by many different names at many different nonprofits. I joke that it's kind of it's where you go when you don't know what you want to do with nonprofits.
Okay.
There's so many pathways to get into the work that I do. I think I might be a little bit of an outlier in that I knew from the onset I wanted to go into nonprofit work and into fundraising.
Like from a child, like from
Yeah,
childhood,
like
like
from a child. Yeah, I knew.
toddling around. I'm about to help people out. Y'all don't even know.
It became clear to me in high school that I had no
Okay.
special skills.
Oh, hey, I'm in that. This is what I'm doing. Like, this is why I'm doing this. I can't do anything else. I just talk to people.
I was like, well, okay, what am I good at? You sit down with your college counselor in high school and they say, well, what makes you feel passionate? I'm like, I don't know how to answer that question. I'm not really particularly good at any subjects. I'm certainly not a budding sports star.
No, no
I
sports
didn't
scholarship in your future. Dang.
sports scholarship for me. My singing voice, not the best.
uh,
So I
yeah.
was like, what do I do with myself?
You tell me, counselor.
This is your job.
Yeah.
But I knew I loved talking to people. So in high school, I got involved in like our ambassador program where I got to like meet new families and I really liked public speaking. I liked writing. I was a good reader and a good writer. And I was like, okay, well, I can't read novels all day. Nobody will pay me to do that. So um, I started thinking about it, and thankfully, my mom was in fundraising, and so I kind of got a glimpse into that world and realized that kind of all she did all day was talk to people and be friends with them and get to know them. And I was like, I could do that. I could definitely do that. So I went to college, and there's no fundraising or nonprofit undergrad degrees.
Until we get into the future, and then somebody will come up with
Until we get into the future, you can go and get your master's in nonprofit studies,
that.
but you
Okay.
really can't get a bachelor's in nonprofits. So I got a degree in communication and
Mhm.
was with a bunch of other people who were pretty much good at the same things that I was good at and not good at the things I wasn't good at. And I
Nice.
started working
Birds
in
of a feather.
our, but yep, we all of us were like, cool, we don't know what we want to do, but this seems like a solid choice,
Yep.
communication.
Hey, everybody's got to talk.
Everybody's got it right. So I started working in our advancement department at our university, and I just kind of continued from there. So it's not something I really fell into, but it is certainly something you can fall into.
Gotcha. When you start with the zoo, are you starting as the director of the President's Club, or is that like you came in at maybe an entry level and then kind of worked your way up?
I came in, it was kind of funny. I came in at the level below mine and then was promoted into the director role. We had there's been a lot, I mean, like there is everywhere, COVID caused a lot of shakeups and between retirements and people finding other jobs and remote work and all this stuff. So there was a lot of opportunity at the zoo, and it was great to be able to move up into that position and just continue the work I had been doing on a bigger scale.
So go to school and then find a job that kind of fits what we went to school for.
Yeah, right. So nonprofit's funny because when I say I'm in nonprofit work, that could mean anything. There's homeless services nonprofits, there's of course conservation nonprofits, there's arts and culture. You could work for museums, which I did for a little while, and that's kind of how I found my way in here. There's all kinds of different nonprofits. And so you can kind of find the industry that is interesting to you and a cause you feel particularly drawn to from within the world of nonprofits. It's a really diverse field.
Yeah. So, okay, that makes sense. Like charities everywhere, and you want to try and, for lack of a better, I don't know, slogan or whatever, find your passion, find the thing you love, but find it within that of like, hey, okay, I know I want to do charity, but I have a passion for animals, so I'm going to do charity in this direction. Or I have a passion for children, so I'm going to do charity in this direction.
Yep. Yep. And I think a lot of us go through, I've met a lot of people in the nonprofit space over the years, and a lot of us kind of go through thinking that we're thinking we found trying to find our niche, I guess. When I was working at the Natural History Museum, I was very fortunate to work for a couple people. It was a really cool job. I was fortunate to work for a couple of people that just they loved they loved the mission. They birded in their spare time. They loved the science.
Okay.
I know,
Yeah,
right? Like
just
who
immersive. Throw yourself into it fully.
totally.
Okay.
And I remember looking at them and being like, I want to find that. I want to find not just something that I believe is a good cause, but something that really personally resonates with me.
Something that want to get you out of bed in the morning.
Yes, and all everything that every nonprofit does is so important, and I think that's what makes it so hard. Every cause you could work for is worthwhile.
Of course.
Of course, but I think it's really about finding what that is for you. And for me, the zoo had been somewhere that I would spend my weekends. I would go after work. I had been a member for years, and the chance to work there just it just clicked for me. Where I was like, oh yeah, this is perfect. I can't wait to go to work at the place where I spend my nights and weekends, and I still go there on the weekends because I it's a place that I love and it's work I believe in.
Yeah, and I'm sure that if you're in that position where you're like, hey, I really enjoy this, then on the weekend when somebody's like, hey, what do we do? You're like, let's go to the zoo. It's awesome. Like
Yes,
I enjoy, yeah, come on. So okay, that makes a lot more
100%.
sense.
Yeah,
That makes
yeah.
a lot more sense. Um, as we've now kind of figured out how we got to the director position, what what does an average day look like for the director of the President's Club? Now, couple little disclaimers we always like to give is I understand, and it can be tough to be like, hey, here's an average day because most jobs, it's there's always going to be something that comes up or something that's out of the blue. But what we're kind of just trying to look at is like typically, when do you start? What does your day look like? Are you, or do you get to hang out with the animals? Are you in an office all day? Are you working from home? So just kind of like what an average day would be, I guess.
Yeah, so we do work in an office. My office is on the zoo grounds. I do work out at a safari park every now and again as well. So it's our job to know both. So I try to spend as much time as I can up at the park because it's not my primary office space.
Gotcha. Real quick, for the people who don't know, what would you say is the main difference between the zoo and the safari park? Or like how would you describe it? I mean, I know from being from San Diego, I know the differences, but
Absolutely.
for those who may have not been, as um, blessed as we are, who how would you describe the two?
Absolutely. I can definitely start out with this. So, the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, as an organization, operates two locations here in San Diego: the San Diego Zoo, which is probably the best known of it's what you see in all the movie shots. It's what they talk about in Anchorman. And then the Safari Park, which is up north, and it is nestled in a gorgeous valley, and it is really meant to recreate the experience of an African safari. So the kind of main attraction or a feature of the safari park is the savannah, which is an open multi-species habitat. And you can take a tram around and really just see the animals interacting with each other and their habitat in a way that it is very close to what you would see, on a Kenyan plain. So it's the zoo is definitely more of that traditional build out where you have habitats kind of as you walk along paths. The safari park is a little bit more open and a little bit more of that open concept.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love both. Like I am a big fan of both. The safari park is to me always like, all right, if you got some time and you want to, really get to see like, hey, this is kind of what it might be like. Um, but then the zoo to me is like, okay, if you want to see like a lot of animals, go to the zoo.
Yeah, people have a favorite. It's so funny. They definitely have one or the other. Our members, they know they are park people or they are zoo people, and they tell you they tell you which one.
Yeah, I mean, my only suggestion, because I had a cousin recently that was going down to San Diego that was like, hey, should we go to the zoo or should we go to the safari park? My only suggestion is if you don't have time for both, and you want to do a lot of things in San Diego, I would suggest the zoo only because it's more central. Whereas if you're like, hey, I want to do something that I've never done before, I want to do something more, more, animal esque, I would do the safari park.
I think that's a really good piece of advice and very similar to the advice I give our members.
Yeah, because she's like, we have a weekend, and I was like, I mean, if you want to go out and you want to do blah blah, like it's going to be way easier just to do the zoo, but the safari
Yeah.
park is definitely worth checking out as well. So what back to kind of average day looking like here?
Average day.
Sorry, we like to do sidetracks. We like to go off on tangents.
I'm here
What
for
we like
it.
to do.
Remember, the
We've
only thing we're good at is talking. This is great. This
exactly,
is perfect for both of
exactly.
us. Yeah.
My last
Um,
guest, we went off on like a Comic Con tangent on like comic. We went off on all kinds of tangents, but
oh yeah.
back to this one.
We can talk about that too if you want
Yeah,
to.
that's true.
So average day. Yeah, do work in an office.
Mhm,
So we keep pretty normal office hours.
mhm.
I would say, a hazard of fundraising is that pretty regularly we have nighttime and weekend events. So it
Gotcha.
is there's always going to be that part of the job. We are working from home part of the time right now. So we do about 2 or 3 days in the office and 2 or 3 days from home. It depends on the
Okay.
week. Yeah, so
So like
it's
a hybrid work schedule.
it's great to have that flexibility. Not everybody in the alliance has that flexibility. It is something that I'm very fortunate to have. The department that we're in and the work that I do can be remote in that way. So but let's say I'm going into the office. I do a lot of communication with our members. So I might spend a couple hours just emailing and calling folks, thanking them for renewing their memberships or welcoming them if they're new members. Just calling, and some of that you form genuine relationships with people when you're in fundraising, and you start to you know what their family looks like, and where they go on vacation and what their favorite what their pets names are. And so you form these genuine relationships, and so you spend a good part of your time just kind of cultivating those relationships and checking in on people, and so had surgery and you want to see how that went. So that's a big part of my day. Another part of my day might just be, it's program administration, of course. So there's always emails to be answered, and bugs in the web pages that we need to fix, and there's checks coming in and money coming in, and so there's always an administrative part of
It's
part of
always
that,
fun.
right? Always
We
fun.
always like the money. We always like the
We
money
love
side of
it.
things, right?
We love it. We have a little bell we ring when we
Eh,
get big money.
nice. I
Uh,
like that. Celebrate
that's
the victories.
hidden staple of every development department. They have a bell.
Okay, there we go.
And then I do a fair amount of events, and that's pretty typical with philanthropy. Kind of wherever you are in philanthropy, whether you're in membership or not. You again, it's all about your job is to cultivate relationships, and to get people to a point where they believe in what you're doing and want to support your project. So face-to-face connection is so critical, and the best and easiest way to do that is through an event. So we plan a fair number of events, hence the night and weekend work. And then it's what comes up in any office job. I have budgets to administrate. I have so and so needs some of copies of whatever materials, and so there's a lot of it that is just it is normal work that you get in any kind of program or administrative job.
Gotcha. So are you managing like people under you? Do you have like a team that you work with? What does that kind of structure look like?
Yep. So our team consists of a specialist and an admin assistant, and then me, and then I report to a senior director. And our senior director also oversees an events team. So I'm on the same kind of division as the philanthropy events team as well.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Um, if you can, if you want to, if you don't, totally fair. We can always edit things. We can always move on. But is there a pay range for your position? Something that I think is important in the Jobology podcast and that people know is what people make, because it eliminates the secrecy, it eliminates the like people who maybe are doing something and they're like, wait a second, that person's doing that job and they're getting paid that. I'm doing this job and I'm getting paid this. Well, something's not right here. So is there like a range that you can expect? And also along with that, are you hourly I'm assuming salary, but I always like to ask.
Yeah. So my answer to this is funny because I very much, salary transparency is so important, and it's so critical. And as a, as even as you move up the ladder, and I oversee people now, and so there's a part of me that has that HR brain on, but I'm an employee first, and so you got to be out there for number one always. And I tell my employees that, I tell people I work with that, I'm like, you are here for you.
Yeah,
And as much as I love my job, I always say that my dream is not work, right? Like if I could be on a beach sipping mai tais all day, that is
that's the
where I would
dream.
be.
That's the dream. Let's be
I
real.
would be
That's
a
the dream.
great volunteer for the zoo
Yeah.
in my spare time when I'm not on my island.
Oh, I'd be a great vacationer. How do we get
Oh,
that job? Hey,
I would be
yeah,
wonderful at
yeah.
that.
Be like, you guys pay me to go on vacation, and then I'll like report back how the vacation was. Sound good? Sound good.
Yeah, sounds great.
Deal.
Little book report.
Yeah.
Uh, so the tough thing about philanthropy is that there is no structure that translates to other organizations. So the titles, the hierarchy of job, nothing is the same in any two nonprofits. So sometimes you have a director's title, sometimes the director is actually a manager, sometimes you have coordinators, sometimes you have specialists, sometimes maybe you report to a senior director or a chief officer, but maybe sometimes those people are the same person. So
Okay. This is getting
there's
out of
not
control.
a lot of, yeah.
This is getting out of control.
So what I tell people though in nonprofits is you can expect to make a little below market value. So you are not, I am not going to make as much as a program administrator in, a biotech company.
Sure.
But what you can do with nonprofits that you can't always do with private companies is you can look up their tax forms and you can see what the top people in that organization are being paid, and then you can kind of go
Oh,
down from there.
okay.
So anytime I apply to a job in the nonprofit sector, I pull up their tax forms, which are publicly available at most
Dude, this is
nonprofits.
great information. Okay. So this is great
You
information. Listen
see
up,
what the
people.
top like 5 or 6 employees are making. Normally, it's the CEO and then the C-suite. You can actually see their information, their public information. It is available what they make in a year, and then you can kind of do that math on downward, right? How far are you removed from those people, and then what is that range going to be? So it's going to differ. It's going to differ from every nonprofit. Some nonprofits or CEOs make 120, 130. You got to go down from there, right? At the zoo, we are a larger nonprofit, so we can expect to be paid a little bit more and on par with that market level. What else was I going to say about this is like a big actually passion project of
I
mine.
love it.
Is like making
Yeah.
sure people are getting paid.
That's that's one of the reasons I started this whole thing was I
Yes,
wanted to pin not necessarily pin people down to like how much do you make, but I wanted to like be able to give the range of like, hey, this
yeah.
is, this is what we're talking about, and not that I don't appreciate the answer of like, oh, I make a decent amount, or I make a lot, or I make a little, but a little to me versus a little to somebody somewhere else in the United States versus to somebody else in another country. I mean, there's no way to know. So, but that is extremely useful information that like, hey, go look it up. Go look it up and kind of just trickle down and find where you're gonna fall. And then that's what you ask for. That's what you can expect.
And I can't tell you I mean, the range is going to sound ridiculous, but the range in our team for directors, I think is about 80 to like 120.
Okay.
I think like higher and lower. I do my best to advocate for transparency between team members, but it's hard, and people are reticent to share that information, and I totally understand why. But I always tell people at the end of the day, it's about us all getting paid what we're worth. And it's nonprofits have often been kind of regaled to, well, it's a nonprofit so you should work for pennies, and often nonprofit workers were the expectation was that you had a rich spouse that was supporting you, and I think that's just talk about inequity. That's how you ended up with super super privileged super privileged, tended to be super white, older, more affluent people that worked in nonprofits for years, and that's kind of who dominated the space. And when you have that, you miss out on the diversity of voices that we know makes an organization
The
and
all
makes
the
that
other people
work.
in the world. Yeah.
Everybody else, the rest of
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
yeah,
Everyone else who goes to the zoo.
everyone else, exactly. So there's been a really big movement in nonprofits in the last couple of years because often you're serving, you might be serving underserved communities. Your workforce should reflect the community that you're serving as the community that you're in. That just makes sense, right? So if it doesn't, what are you doing? So there's been a really great movement toward salary transparency, toward the idea that you should not, you should be able to support yourself on a nonprofit salary, and you shouldn't be relying on a rich spouse. But that's
No,
truly,
not unless
that
you're
is an
lucky enough.
argument. That is an argument I've heard, and
Yeah.
it's just absurd to those of us who are coming up. And it's like I'm making it. I'm trying to make a living out here.
Exactly. And that's the thing too, kind of what we mentioned about the great resignation, because that's something we had talked about in a previous podcast as well, is knowing your worth and knowing like, hey, just because you're working for this company A, company B, company C, whatever, doesn't mean you get to then, be like, oh, they can treat me however they want. And like, no, that's not, no. And make sure you're getting paid what you're worth. Make sure, everything is kind of on the up and up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, everybody is a little bit different. And of course, I'm making huge assumptions when I say nonprofits, because again, the industries span every industry you could think of.
Right.
But I think that sometimes they learn that the hard way. Again, this is like total passion project of mine, but watching nonprofits learn that, where they lose really good people because they kind of take that what I think is a very old fashioned view of, well, this is a nonprofit, you're going to get paid less. I think is It's a mistake, and it's one I think a lot of folks are still making. And I think when nonprofit organizations are smart, they realize that that is not the way that we should be thinking, and that's not the way to attract people that are going to further your mission and do the work to bring to make sure you're still doing this work in 50 years, 100 years.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a great way of kind of summing that up. We discuss benefits as in, again, salaried employee. So I'm assuming medical, dental, 401k, all that jazz. Is there any perks that, or benefit, but not benefits as in, those kind of traditional benefits, but is there any like perks or benefits that we as the outside person might not see that come with the director's role? Like, I mean, something that maybe I could think of off the top of my head is like, hey, I can go up to a zookeeper and be like, hey, I want to pet a tiger. And they're like, cool, come on and pet the tiger. Like, I don't, maybe not, but that's just something of like, do you get, playtime with the animals as a perk? Like, is there any cool perks?
I can like see the email in my inbox from our PR team, depending on how I answer this question. Um, no, so the zoo really does their best to try and cultivate and I should say the alliance does their best to cultivate an environment where employees feel really appreciated. We unfortunately cannot pet the tigers.
Dang,
Yeah, I know.
dang.
It's a
What if they're
bummer for
sleeping?
all of us.
Like, he's sleeping.
No,
Let me
I
just pet his
know.
tail real quick and get up.
I said that and they still turned me down. Stupid, I
Son
know.
of a gun.
I know. But so when it comes to our wildlife, our wildlife care specialists are always the end all be all. And it might surprise you to learn, but there are folks who have requested that, they want to feed the tigers from their
Oh,
hands or feed the lions from their hands. And I'm always like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You don't know what you want.
that's still a wild animal. Like,
Yes.
at the end of the day, it is still a wild animal, people.
Yes. And so our wildlife is really kind of put their needs and their how they live their lives are put far above any of our wants and desires. And so I can say that working for the Alliance means that I do get tickets to share with my friends and family. So I love that perk of it. I get into the zoo and the park for free. And I that it's great. They do a lot of really great events. There's a group of folks from the Alliance at a Padres game right now. So
Hopefully they're winning.
they
Fingers crossed.
yeah, I know. I'm like I'm waiting for the news alert to pop up on my
Bling.
phone. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I mean, they really, I will say, I've of all the places I worked, well, I mean, no place has been bad, but I do feel like the zoo, because there's so many employees, there's thousands of people that work for the alliance, and so they try to make sure we all feel really connected, and they try to make sure we know what's going on. Regular updates from leadership. We had an all hands meeting. We actually closed the zoo in the park so all of our frontline teams could come, and we all met at the convention center. I mean, that's it's so easy to do that when you have 100 employees. It is much harder to do that when you have 3,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, and people from all over the world. So it was they try their best. Perks though, yeah, no wildlife, no. I will say sometimes I see the cheetah walking around the zoo in the morning
That's pretty cool.
before the zoo has opened. So I feel like that's a perk. That's a perk for me. Yeah.
What about that peacock? I
Oh,
this for some reason, okay, this didn't even come in the realm of questioning until literally right now when you said the cheetah. Like if you've never been to the San Diego Zoo, there is a peacock that just, this is my zoo. I run this zoo. Get out of my, like. Is that a cool thing? Is that okay? Is that something you guys are like, hey, we know it? Like, I mean, clearly you know about it, but like, is it
yeah.
something we're like, yeah, we know about it. We're, "No, we don't really like it, but hey, what can we do?"
I mean, I would again answer that question with another question. When is seeing a peacock not cool?
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
No, so
Dang.
the zoo does. We do know about the peacock. We are very aware of its whereabouts. I am positive that the wildlife care staff has it geotagged in some way. But I always tell people we have birds that fly around as well, and they always say, "Well, don't they fly away?" And I say, "Where is there a more consistent source of food and water and treats and enrichment?" And you
Yeah,
know,
you go where
so, but the
you're
peacock
fed.
does, oh, exactly. But the peacock
Yeah.
will wander outside.
Mhm.
They actually leave the zoo and they will go
Okay.
outside in the parking lot. And sometimes they'll be on the front plaza greeting guests. And we just encourage people to, don't touch them, leave them alone. But they're gorgeous. They're there to be admired, and they love showing off. So yes, they do just wander to the zoo. They are just friends, and it's wonderful that we're able to have that kind of experience for guests. We call it a surprise and delight, because when you look up in the tree and there's a peacock there, I mean, who's not surprised and delighted?
Yeah. No,
Um,
definitely. I mean, when you turn a corner and you see it like crossing the right, you're like, what in
yeah,
the? But it's
you're
so
like,
cool
this is
because it's like this is
wonderful.
right. Yeah, it feels like an immersive experience, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that is you're right. That is a great perk of my
I
job.
like that. Hey, okay, viewing animals away from the public, not playing with animals away from the public. Got it.
Yes. Yeah. Taking an early, if I get to the zoo early enough, taking an early morning trip just to walk to the habitats, me, myself, and I mean, that's a perk.
That's really, yeah, nobody else's job. You don't get to do that.
No, no. I'm walking to I'm walking from my car to my office, and there's the tortoises and there's the cheetahs, and I got to see the baby giraffe the day it was born. I mean, there's a lot of great things about working at the zoo. Yeah.
That's awesome. We're gonna kind of move to the next little portion here. We kind of touched on it a little bit already, but like job hierarchy. So you said, you have people under you, and then there's somebody you report to. Is this the path you want to continue taking, where you're just going to keep moving up the ladder, or not necessarily like you're leaving the zoo tomorrow, but more just like, is that kind of what you think would be kind of your future?
Okay, yeah. I mean, multiple answers to a kind of a complicated question, right?
Hmm.
I am definitely in you know, I guess kind of out of that first stage of my career, officially in the mid ages. My career is middle
No,
aged.
no,
Um,
we're young. Well, you're
been
young. Yeah, you're
forever.
young. I'm old.
So, right, like I want to keep growing. I want to keep moving up and keep exploring pathways. I think it can be hard to see what that pathway is. I mean, for right now, I am so happy where I am. I work under a really great senior director who has a lot of experience in this field, and I think because nothing is the same anywhere, and because everywhere is just a little bit different, I couldn't have told you that I would have been doing this 5 years ago. Couldn't have told you that I was going to be. I've fallen into this very, this little part of philanthropy here. So I mean, who knows, right? But I really, it is my goal to stay with the zoo. I joke all the time that I'll die at my desk, and I'll die a happy person. So
Okay.
So it's yeah, I hope to always though be challenged, be growing. I mean, I think that that's always the biggest thing. The minute that you're not growing, you're not forwarding your skills. You know, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So but thankfully the zoo is plenty challenging and I have plenty to learn and there's so much more we could be doing. So I'm really I have my work cut out for me.
Yeah. You got a lot on your plate and it's not an empty plate. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
So I have 5 job specific questions. We'll see how actually job specific they are. If something doesn't apply, you're more than welcome to be like, hey, that doesn't really apply to me, or I don't really have an answer for that. But if you do, great. So first question I have here, this kind of goes with sort of what we were talking about, I guess. Hypothetically, I'll put hypothetically on there. So
Perfect.
hypothetically, if you could take any animal as a pet from the zoo to have as your own, what animal would you take?
Tough question, right? Okay, well, I think I'd have to take the burrowing owl for a variety of reasons. Number one, they're about this big. They're little tiny itty bitty owls.
Oh, that's pretty cute. Okay.
They dig holes. They live underground. So they burrow. They are truly burrowing, and they are from our Southwest region. So they would do really well in my home, and I just think they are so cute. They every time I
I
see them, they
mean,
kill me.
little owl, how could you not be?
Oh,
Could it not be
they're
cute?
wonderful. They live with our prairie dogs right now. They share a habitat with our prairie dogs, and it is
Okay.
one of my favorite areas. Yeah.
That's a great answer. I would go with giraffe if I had the space, but hey,
Ooh.
anyways, I just always wanted to ride a giraffe.
I love how my answer was pretty pragmatic and yours was like a giraffe.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
if I'm getting an animal from a zoo, we're going big.
You're
I ain't
going big.
going, yeah. Elephant or giraffe, one of the two. Yeah, come on. Let's get real.
They stink. Elephants smell. I don't want that. I don't need that
Okay.
in my house.
I I mean, if we're gonna break it down, like, well, then sure, then yeah, elephant won't fit in my house. Well, fine, but I like to live in the fantasy world of where everything works out for me.
Perfect.
Yeah. Second question: are there any accomplishments in the area of conservation that we need to be excited about? That we're like, hey, we just accomplished X.
Yeah. I don't have, I mean, without sounding like a walking advertisement for the zoo, I don't have one thing to point to. Unfortunately, things are getting worse.
I
Right?
have a feeling. I mean, I have a question coming up about that angle too, but I
Yeah,
wanted to start with the positive first. Be like, hey, is there something we can all rally behind that we've
but
accomplished?
I can say that the conversation, as it's want to do, is shifting to not just conservation is including now people, planet, animals, right? People, planet, wildlife, and um, that is such a critical shift because when you're combating climate change, that has impacts on conservation. When you're combating climate change and conservation, that has impacts on local economies. Some economies are based off of practices that might not be conservation friendly. So you can't go in and say, you guys can't make a livelihood, you can't feed your families because we have to save, the rhinos and you can't, it doesn't work like that.
No,
So
the person's like, I've
we've
never even seen a rhino. Why,
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
So I feel like the real advancement in the past couple of years has been number one, a widespread acceptance that climate change is a problem. It is real and it is a problem, and we need to take drastic steps to mitigate it. And it's been that conservation includes so many more things than just save the rhinos. It's let's build a sustainable future for our environment, for our wildlife, and for the people that inhabit this planet. So I think that I really think that that's a big accomplishment.
I would agree. Yeah, I mean, I think getting shining a light on something can be an accomplishment on its own, especially if that light has been out for X amount of time.
Yeah. It was enough just to like get people to admit climate change was real, right?
Exactly. That
So
yeah,
check.
exactly. Well, and we're still not all the way there, but
And we're still not all the way there.
hey.
There's so much more we need to be doing, but so many
Yeah,
people, so many more people are aware of it. And I think
that's
that's
true.
that is wonderful. Yeah.
Yes, I would have to agree. Now that we've hit the positive, we're gonna have to slide over to the negative a little bit. Is there an animal on the verge of extinction or endangerment that we need to be at like dire situation? Dire, like, oh, this is not gonna go well.
Yeah, every species on the endangered list. Um, this is a tough question because how do you rank the importance of a species, right? But this question makes me think of the monarch butterflies, which were just recently listed as endangered.
That's literally what my producer slash fiance, I should probably say fiance slash producer. Fiance is more
Yeah,
appropriate.
yeah, uh-huh.
That's what she literally said while we were kind of prepping for this. She goes, "Yeah, I just saw a thing about the monarch butterflies," and I was like, "Uh oh."
Yeah. So they are endangered, and it's the ecosystem, though it is incredibly robust and can withstand so many things, it's also an incredibly fragile system. So when you start to, I always tell people that it's really easy to point to the polar bears and to the rhinos and to, wild giraffes, and
Not my
say, look,
giraffes.
look, look, not my giraffe.
No.
Look at these, look at the habitat loss, look at what's happening. But I think the, you know, equally as important, if maybe not even more so, again, without ranking them, are the smaller parts of our ecosystem, the bugs and the kind of workhorses of the ecosystem, the pollinators. I mean, there's been a big conversation about bees,
I was gonna say everybody always brings up
right?
bees.
Everyone always brings up bees. So when you see species like the monarch butterfly be on that endangered list, it's indicative of a much larger, more deeply seated problem than poaching, than than even like habitat loss. You're seeing a decline in what makes the ecosystem, the building blocks of the ecosystem. So yeah, it is important that we do things. It is very important that we do things and do a lot of things very quickly,
Right.
or we
Take
are going
actions.
to lose. Yeah,
Hmm.
take action because we are going to lose some really vital parts of our ecosystem, and we are a part of the ecosystem. So that
Yeah.
is not good for us.
I think people have a hard time. I think a lot, and I mean, this is just my opinion. I don't know if it's true. I think that a lot of people have a tough time realizing that. I think they like to go, so humans are here, everything else is here. And it's like, no, no, it's all together. I mean, if one part goes down, then that's going to affect us eventually. Like it's going to get to us somewhere or another. So it's a very good way of putting it of like, hey, while yes, the big things are important as well, the little things are extremely important too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I love food.
Yeah.
Food's cool. I
Yeah,
love to
it's pretty
have
good.
that. It's pretty
Kind of
good.
useful. I don't know.
We rely on pollinators and other
Mhm.
insect species. We don't want carrion carcasses everywhere. We rely on bugs and other like roadkill cleanup. We have such, there's so many species that are such an important part of our ecosystem, what impacts us the most. It is hard to see the connection to a rhino in Kenya, but it is incredibly easy to see how your selection of food at the supermarket declines as we see a decline in our pollinators. So, it's the little things. It really is, and the devil's in the details when it comes to conservation.
Well, that's a great way of putting that. Now moving on to something a little more fun.
You don't want to talk about dying bees all day.
I mean, I now that I know my giraffes are there's something going on. This whole thing is switching
It's
around.
a silent
Uh,
extinction with giraffes. You
I'll
you
be the
better get on
vocal,
that.
be
Yeah.
the vocal leader for the damn giraffes. Those are my Animal Kingdom brothers and sisters. So what we talked about events at the zoo, putting on events at the zoo. Something we like to talk about on the podcast is I like extravagance. I mean, I understand that, hey,
Totally.
maybe, but it's
Opulence,
yeah,
absolutely.
fun to go to extravagant things. It's fun to be extravagant from time to time if you can. What's the most extravagant event the zoo puts on?
I love this question. So my department, philanthropy events team puts on Rendezvous in the Zoo.
I like that. Okay.
Yeah. It is a wonderful party. We just had it in June. It's black tie. It starts with a long cocktail hour on the front zoo plaza. So you get to smell those flamingos as you sip your champagne, which for me just, really does it for me.
I think that's what they say. I think they say you should pair your champagne with the flamingo smell.
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
like opens
A
up the
little
bubbles
boob,
or something.
a little flamingo. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it like opens the bubble. Yeah, that's totally what they say.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's entertainment and there's always something. We actually drove a caravan truck onto the front plaza of the zoo this year, so that was really fun. I was holding our day guests in a gown and directing a truck onto the zoo plaza. So
Mhm,
yep, that was me. I would nope,
mhm,
nope,
yeah,
come here.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
So
Nice.
that it was really fun. Dinner and dancing and bands, and it's just fun to you're not normally in black tie at a zoo, and there is
Yeah,
something
I
really
never.
fun about that. Yeah. Yeah. And so people, all kinds of people come. We have, our local, like we'll have, San Diego, but it's a big event, and it's been really well attended by kind of the who's who in San Diego over the last, 20, 30 years.
How much does it cost for me to get a ticket to that event?
We have a party guest ticket and it starts at 350, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking when you started with 3, the next word was gonna be 1,000. So,
I
if the
mean, there
next
are
word
those
was
options
50,
too.
yeah, the next word's 50, I'm like, "Okay, that's not as crazy as I thought it was gonna be."
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
nice. Final little question we got here. If you could add any animal to the zoo, so if you haven't been to the San Diego Zoo has a wide variety of animals. I mean, like insane amount. I don't even know. I mean, you probably have a better idea of exactly how many different species, varieties of animal.
18,000
Okay,
individual animals.
I would have get. I know.
And like individuals, and remember that's like crickets. So
Mm-hmm.
we have the food that the food eats. So we have
Oh,
crickets
you
and
count that. Mm-hmm.
crayfish, but all the way up to, of course, elephants and rhinos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
something like that. It's always a little bit different, but
I
yeah, that's the
mean,
last number I heard.
yeah.
18,000.
Okay, so since we got
Crazy, right?
18,000 animals at the zoo, maybe you don't want to add it. Maybe you're like, you know what? We don't need to add anything. We like our numbers are great the way it is. We're done. But if you could add an animal that maybe the zoo doesn't have or that you think would be helpful for the zoo, or you're just like, hey, that'd be a fun animal to have, what would it be and why?
I am going to join the rest of San Diego in saying that I would bring back our pandas.
Yeah. So the pandas are gone. Are they're gone?
The pandas are gone. We had a 20-year contract with China to essentially see if we could. The zoo's all about reproduction, so we wanted baby pandas, and
It's how you fix some side of endangerment or
that's
extinction. You
how
gotta.
you do it.
There's got to
We are
be a couple
all
different
about
ways. Yeah.
reproduction,
There you
all
go.
about reproduction. So, that contract ended, and we were sad to see them go. We are really proud of the work that we did with them. I believe there's still a lot of open channels of communication and collaboration, as there always is worldwide with conservation work. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty special having those pandas, and I think the zoo and the safari park have such an amazing collection of animals, but man, it would be cool if we had those pandas.
Yeah, there's something about the pandas. I don't know why. Because this is always something that's fascinating to me too. Is like everybody's all about the pan, like, but I mean, it's just a bear. I mean, you know what
Oh,
I mean?
and
Like,
they don't do anything but
no,
sit on their haunches and eat. That's it.
yeah, but but it is so like fascinating for some reason, and maybe that is because of the like rarity that people are like, hey, I want to go see something I'm probably never going to get to see.
I think that's what it is. We have species at the zoo that we have platypus. We are one of the only zoos in North America, if not the only zoo in North America, to have platypus.
Interesting. I don't know.
So we have this. We're so spoiled, right? Like, what would I add to the zoo? And I'm like, I don't know, nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. We have
But there
18,000
is,
animals.
yeah, right. But yeah, there is something special about those pandas, and I
Nice.
think I think the majority of San Diego would be so happy. But who knows? That's totally out of our hands.
Oh, okay. So that is something that's not on your plate. When you're talking about your plate
No.
of stuff, getting the pandas back that's on someone else's plate. If that's what's
It's on
happening, then
someone
somebody else
else's
is dealing
plate.
with that. Okay.
No, I unfortunately am not responsible for our American Chinese diplomatic relations that would be entailed to get those
Yeah,
pandas back.
that's true. Okay. That's true.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
another part that I've tried to introduce when I remember to, because sometimes I forget, is a little segment of how can I be better too. So we talked about positivity. Something we like to promote on Jobology a lot is the positive side of jobs, of life, of I don't know, whatever the other third word I'm supposed to say there is. Uh and So, as a zoo goer, as a zoo supporter, how can I be better to the director of the President's Club? Like, is there something that me, just regular old Brandon, can do to make either your life easier, your job easier, something like that?
That's a really interesting question. I always encourage. I'll give a little bit more of a generic answer. I encourage people to be kind to to any frontline worker. The summer months are hard and they are full of people, and it's a kind word or a smile in your interaction goes a really long way for somebody who's been in the sun for the last 6 hours and has dealt
Yeah.
with a variety of complaints and issues that come up when you work with.
Sights, sounds, and smells. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, it's not necessarily like how to be better to me, but I think I care really deeply about the experience that people have at the zoo and the park. Obviously, it's important to me as somebody who promotes then becoming a member. Um, so give us your feedback. You can stop by any guest booth at the zoo or the park and tell us how your day went and what we can do better. You can always submit that feedback online as well. You don't have to do it while you're there. That's really helpful to us. But yeah, I think kindness. I always encourage patience. It's been a long couple of years for folks, and we're still very much in it. And so, like I said, a little patience and a smile go a long way in those interactions. So that's how you make. And then I don't have to hear about how
Yeah.
Brandon came and caused an uproar at the zoo, and we had to kick him out
Hey,
forever.
hey,
Yeah,
hey. Yeah, he was trying to ride a giraffe. This guy won't leave him alone. She even eat Christmas.
that would make its way to my desk, and I
Yeah.
don't need that.
Oh. Be like, but I know Megan. She said,
For legal reasons.
no, yeah, right. No. Uh, the last bit of the podcast, something that we always like to do is I like to give my guests some time to either promote something that they're doing, like a side hustle, for example, or if they have a business that they're interested in promoting, or if they just want to give people some not extra knowledge or whatever it might be. Here's your time.
Okay. Well, actually, I'll stay on brand here. I met some really incredible people from a company called Sustainable Surf. We just spent the last couple of minutes of this podcast talking about how we're all interconnected and how our health depends on each other, and 70% of our world is ocean, and it's really important to also think about our oceanic habitats. So Sustainable Surf is a nonprofit. They do a lot of really cool partnerships, a lot of really cool programs. I met them at a brewery, so they're cool people.
Nice. There you
They
go.
were they were there. I was like drinking beer for the cause, and that's always if
Nice.
I can support by drinking beer, I am
Yeah.
supporting all the way.
Same.
Pour me
Same.
another round of support.
Yes. Yes. I like that. Pour me another round of support. That's awesome.
So yeah, so I thought that would be kind of something fun to call out here. There's so many great organizations and things for people, like if they're so interested in helping save this planet, that they can do. And finding what works for you. It doesn't have to be straight donations. It doesn't have to be a membership somewhere. It can be drinking beer at a brewery where some of the proceeds go back to a great nonprofit. So that's my plug. Get out there and drink some beers.
Nice. I like it. I like it. And the company again was Sustainable Surf.
Sustainable Surf. So they do a really interesting thing. They have straight philanthropy projects you can donate to, and then they also have like a retail side of it. So they make surfboards out of sustainable materials,
That's
ocean
really
friendly
cool.
materials. It is
Oh,
cool. I
neat.
mean, giving people more ways to support, I think, is always so
Yeah.
interesting. So I don't work for them. I don't work with them. I bet them. I talked to them for a little while and thought what they did was really cool. So shout out to them.
Yeah, that's the whole point. I mean, I think I've said 19 times this time. That's the whole point of this spot. But one of the main reasons I started this was for stuff like that. Of like, hey, I now now people can know, hey, here's where you can go help Sustainable Surf. We will put all the links in the descriptions. We will put links to the zoo, put links to all the different things. And one thing I wanted to mention prior was when you were talking about feedback, I think it's important that people know, hey, when you do give feedback, somebody's listening.
Oh yeah.
A lot of times I feel like okay, if it's, give us your feedback and I put something in, it just goes into an email and nobody's ever looked, nobody does anything. So what's the point? But if you're sitting here saying, no, if you guys give us we do look at it and we do actually digest it and think, then I think that's awesome that people then have a spot where they can go, okay, there, it's not just going into the void.
That's a great point. I absolutely understand how people feel that way, and I can assure you there is somebody on the other end of that, receiving that, cataloging it, and doing something about it. We every team that works at an organization like the zoo, like the safari park, anything you go to, they want to do a good job. They are here so that you enjoy this day, you enjoy this experience, you walk out with a deeper understanding of what we do, why we do what we do. So there is somebody on the other end there. So again, kindness. Yeah, it's easy to get a little frustrated and hit that internet, that keyboard warrior, but yeah, kindness
Put in the
always.
subject line Jobology podcast, and then Megan will know, hey, this Sherry on here,
It'll
you'll be
elevate it right
friendly.
to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that's all I got for you. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this for me. And I really appreciate you giving us all the information about conservation and that, hey, this is something that it's not a passive event. It's not something that we can just sit by, guys. Like it is something we actually have to take action on. We actually have to do things to create that better future.
yeah. Yes, you go out and drink those beers.
Hey, boom. Love it.
Truly, though.
Thank
No,
you.
thank you for having me on. This was great.
Well, that's it for another episode of the Jobology podcast. And thank you, Megan, for taking the time out of your day to tell us all how we can participate better in a changing world. Before I let you guys go, a couple quick reminders. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and follow on all social media platforms at Jobology Podcast. And like we say to end every episode, make good choices.